Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. I'm Pat Welsh, your host, and today we just have a great, great guest who has a fascinating story to share with us and some great insights. Michael Laidler, 20-year in law enforcement career. He went from officer to federal agent to federal prison executive, has learned what it truly means to lead under pressure. Every shift that he worked demanded composure, clarity, and trust, but he's going to share with us his greatest lessons came outside the uniform, overcoming homelessness, watching family members suffer from mental health issues, and raising his son as a single father. Those moments taught him that the hardest battles aren't around us, they're between our two ears. Today, Michael is a leadership keynote speaker, best-selling author, and resilience strategist trusted by Fortune 500 companies, public safety agencies, and leadership teams nationwide. And he's going to share with us his framework, Failure Fuels Growth, and how it equips leaders to thrive with clarity and resilience under pressure, transforming setbacks into systems for sustained performance and trust. Michael, welcome to the show, man. This is going to be awesome because you're going to have a great story to share with us.
Absolutely, Pat. Thanks for taking the time out. Thanks for putting this podcast together. I know being a podcast host myself, sometimes the hardest thing is just getting a guest on and making sure
Yeah.
everything works. And we've been flowing perfectly already. The green room was nice and smooth. I'm excited.
Oh, that's awesome. And um, I'd like to just start. Every story has a beginning and a middle and an end, and I know our audience is here to learn some tools and skill sets and be encouraged and inspired in the leadership arena, in their personal lives and professional and faith lives. But I want to start at the beginning of your story and what's I don't know if you're old enough to remember Paul Harvey, but Paul
Mhm.
Harvey always had a show, the rest of the story. What is the rest of the story uh, behind your greatest lessons? The homelessness, the mental health issues, and raising your son as a single parent. Tell us, tell us that beginning because it seems that kind of frames your whole journey.
Yeah, absolutely, Pat. Yeah. You know, one thing I've learned as a speaker and as I've just matured as a leader is a lot of people want to have this one hit story that they just want to tell and that they live by. But what truly happens for all us average folk is that there's a number of things that happen in our lives. There's a number of people we meet. There's just a number of incidents that shape who we are. It's
Yeah.
not just one incident. It's a multitude of them. So for me, as you said, there's always a story behind a story. And I know in my case, that started in childhood. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and we didn't grow up with a lot of money. We were that family that was moving every year, not because we wanted to, it's because of eviction. There were so many times
Wow.
that we didn't know where we are going to stay. We didn't know when the next meal was going to come. There's times when we slept on other people's couches. There's times when we didn't have electricity. I remember summers eating only hot dogs and ramen noodles. I mean, it's things that shape us over time. And then during those same times, I went through other crises and I went through other trauma that I hid for a very long time because I thought, especially when I looked at the external world, I was like, you know what? My story's not as hard as their words. I didn't fall off a mountain, or I didn't get shot, or I didn't have some of these very polarizing stories that people live by. But I was like, no, I still have things that have happened. So
Mhm.
on top of the homelessness, on top of living in poverty and just struggling financially, my mother, she suffered or she had a suicidal attempt when I was in high school. And I hid that for so long because I thought that was going to shape me if people knew about it. So it wasn't until maybe 2021, 2022, 23 where I really started to talk about that,
Mhm.
because there's so many things that happen in our childhood once again, and we hide it because we think we're trying to protect other people, but we're just afraid of what they're going to really say about us. When truly people want to know that you're human. People want to know that you've been through a few things in your life. People want to know how you overcame this. So for me, that's where my journey started, was my childhood. Like I said, not having financial support, very loving family. I can never say that. I was never abused. I was never left stranded thinking my mother wasn't going to be around, or my grandmother, or
Mm.
my sister. But the financial side, which is very important. And I don't know about you, Pat, but I hate when people say money don't mean anything, because
Yeah.
it's only, to me, it's only people that say that is people that have money, or people that don't have financial responsibilities. Guys, money matters. That doesn't mean you live your life every day trying to get every single penny, and you hurt other people and you don't care for your family. But I rather make hard decisions with money than make hard decisions without money. I mean, it's it goes. So for us, that's what we went through. And then obviously you mentioned my law enforcement career. I started at the age of 19 as a police officer. Then I went to Border Patrol, and then I went to federal corrections. And for so long, I thought that's where my life started. I thought my profession is what defined me. But come to
Mhm.
find out, it was everything and the profession. So for me, I've been on a journey the last, business wise, at least the last 8 years, but truly the last 3 years, really trying to help people lead themselves. Because you can't be a leader of an organization, you can't be a leader of a team if you don't know how to win that battle between your ears, if you don't know how to create that own fuel for your resilience, if you don't have some kind of framework that helps you get through those tough days. So for me, that's what I've really been pushing, because I know, just as a human, you have to have things in place, because those bad days don't show up when you want them to show up. They show up when you least expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. That's well, it's really kind of interesting. I'm significantly older than you are, but that storyline
Mhm.
of everything, your childhood does impact, and to a certain degree informs the path you end up taking. And when I was 3 days old, I was dropped off at an orphanage in another country. I was born in Ireland, and 3 days old, my birth mother just dropped me off at an orphanage and left. And now I had the blessing to actually meet her in person 40 years later. But you grow up as a child that you think what's happening to you and in you is normal. And, so I was adopted. I was the only kid in the neighborhood that had to go to federal court at the age of 5 and a half, and that was
Wow.
to become a US citizen. Yeah, so it's, you have these things going on, and you don't realize, um, until maybe later on in your life, where you get a little bit bigger worldview, uh, that what you thought was normal and everybody was going through, isn't the case. Now, you talked about it. So how'd you get into law enforcement? Because you were Tallahassee, right? That's where you
Yes, yes.
started, Tallahassee
Yes.
PD. So how did you go from uh, bouncing around as a teenager at 19 years old, going into law enforcement in the first place?
So the funny story, and a lot of people, I mean, when I speak on stage, I talk about this story all the time. But um, for me, it was something that happened during the mid 90s in LA that sparked my interest heavily in law enforcement. And that was the OJ Simpson chase. I can remember
Yeah.
being in my home in the 90s, and that was the only thing on the TV.
The
Obviously, we didn't
white
have
the
social
white
media back
Bronco
then.
the white the
Yeah,
white Bronco.
uh-huh, uh-huh. I remember that, and I don't know if it was the case, I don't know if it was the chase, I don't know if it was all the dynamics and personalities, but I remember starting in 1994, I told myself I was gonna be a homicide detective in LA. So that was my goal. So from that point forward, literally, I can trace it. I can trace it back to June of '94. Like I know when my passion for law enforcement started, which I know a lot of people are like they're like, we just like want to be a police officer. Well, I knew that at that moment, that's what I was going to do. So for the following years after that, as a kid, I didn't do as much stuff. I didn't volunteer as a police explorer or nothing like that. But in high school, the school I went to was a technical school. And the cool part about it is that it offered different, like they called it academies, but it was kind of like different learning paths. And one
Mhm.
of those was criminal justice. So starting in ninth grade, I started studying criminal justice, which just fueled more of my own fire to get in law enforcement. Then when I graduated high school, I ended up going to Florida State University. While there, I was studying criminology. Also, while there, my sister had just graduated from Florida State, and she got a job as a police dispatcher for the Tallahassee Police Department. She came home one day. It was the summer of 2004. I had just turned 19, and she was like, "Hey, look, you meet the minimum requirements. You're at least 19 and you have 60 credit hours." So me knowing I'm not going to lose anything, I have nothing to lose, because at the time I was working at Blockbuster Video and going to college. So it could only go uphill from here. So Pat, I applied for it. And when they called me in December, a few months after that, they were like, I thought they were calling to say, "Hey, great job. You did great, but we don't need you." No, complete opposite. I got called and they was like, "Hey, congratulations. Starting in June of 2005, we're going to sponsor you through the police academy." So that's where my journey started. It literally started at the age of 19. And by the time I hit the streets in FTO, I want to say I had just turned 20, because I can't remember if I started in July or in August on the streets. But my birthday's July 30th. So at some point, I had, and no matter what, I was a fresh 20 or I was a late 19, however that looks. But yeah, that's how I started my career. It was more of just an opportunity, and my sister believing in me and me preparing myself, because if I didn't have those credit hours and I wasn't thinking criminal justice when she came home, then I wouldn't have jumped on that opportunity as easily.
Wow. So then I know you said, LA homicide. What caused your path? Because you go from Tallahassee to a Border Patrol K-9 handler, and then into the federal correction system. So what led that way? And none of that is LA.
No, not one bit. No. And the first time I actually went to LA was like 3 years ago, and that was to do a podcast and to go to a company called First Responder Wellness. But so when I was a police officer, I always wanted to get into the federal government, because I heard what people said, like, "Hey, you get in the federal government, you can move anywhere." So I was like, cool. I'm already used to being mobile. I mean, growing up, I never lived in one place anyways. So why not have someone pay for my travel wherever I go?
Yeah.
So I first applied for the FBI, and I don't know if it's changed, but back then they didn't care if you were a police officer with a bachelor's degree. They can care less. Yep. They were looking for people with actual specialties like accounting, lawyer, different languages. They were looking for very specific things. So I applied. They told me, heck no, good luck, try again. But I was like, you know what? I'm not giving up on this drive and this desire. So coincidentally, in 2009, that's when former President Bush had just approved all these additional positions for Border Patrol. So Border Patrol was pushing them through. So I jumped on that bandwagon, and I was like, you know what? I don't know what a Border Patrol is. I don't even know where like Laredo, Texas is, but I'm going to apply, see what happens. And it was an amazing journey. Those folks over in Border Patrol, no matter if they're on the southern border or the northern border, they are amazing. And the bravery that I learned working side by side is second to none. And I say that to say is, when you're a street cop, where's your backup? Usually within 30 seconds, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. If you're a deputy sheriff, your backup may be a little bit further. If you're a state trooper, it could be forever. But Border Patrol, you're literally out there knowing that you're working and you're going to encounter people that probably don't speak your primary language, and you're going to run into a good amount of people. There's many times when I came up on 20, 30, 40 people, or I came up on 6 drug smugglers with 50-pound hay bales of weed on their back. Yeah. So needless to say, I really like Border Patrol. It was really good people, and their job's hard. So once I was in Border Patrol, although I was doing great, I was a K-9 handler. I had a Belgian Malinois. I had a take-home ride. I didn't do any paperwork. I mean, it was great all around. I would catch some dope or some people, and that agent, whoever was working, they had to do the paperwork. So that was always cool to deal with. But my son was born, and my wife at the time, neither of us were from Texas. So we were like, hey, we need to get back close to home. Coincidentally, one of the guys I met in Laredo, he had worked with the federal prisons before he had became a U.S. Marshal. So he was like, "Hey, man, federal prisons, like they have prisons everywhere. They have 122 of them throughout the U.S. So it makes sense." He was like, "Why don't you see where your family's at and see if there's a close prison?" Luckily, there was a prison within about 45 minutes to an hour of where my ex-wife was from. So I applied in May of 2013, and I was working at a federal prison by September of 2013. And that journey in the federal prison, because just like the inmates, the workers are inside the prisons too. That's been a great journey. It's one of those organizations and agencies that are extremely underrated and undervalued because it's easy for us to arrest people and just say lock them away. But
Mm.
who's watching them? Who's keeping them in there? Who's dealing with them 24 hours a day? Um, but needs to say, I never got to LA. Not at least as an officer or not in an official capacity, but I have been there, like I said, on a few podcasts.
Yeah.
My favorite basketball team is the Lakers, so I find myself at least looking at LA from a distance. And one cool thing I was able to do 3 years ago, I had got April Tardy. She was at that time the undersheriff of the LA County Sheriff's Office. I had her on my podcast.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've actually been able to go both inside of the sheriff's department over there and the police department. So that's been pretty cool.
Wow. So somewhere along that line, you also ended up getting a MBA.
Mhm.
So what's a lot of people, particularly in the law enforcement arena, and if they're really like old school, which I am, although I had the law degree, I did it backwards. I was an assistant district attorney who became a cop, and it was almost even in the interview process. I was getting grilled by guys who I prosecuted their arrest, and they're on the oral review board, and they're kind of like holding it against me of, oh yeah, you got a law degree, you're gonna rocket up the ranks, and you'll never be a real cop, and this, that, and the other thing. What's your insights on the importance of formal education, and not just in law enforcement, but in any career path? You're working with Fortune 500 companies, and get I mean, there's burnout and all sorts of stuff that goes on in the corporate world that goes on in the law enforcement arena as well. But where's education fall in there as far as um, your perspective coming from where the life that you grew up in?
It's interesting because when I started my collegiate journey at Florida State, well, a community college, then I went to Florida State. I was studying criminal justice, and I can remember the moment that I decided I wasn't going to study criminal justice. I was 19 years old, and we were going through driving training at Tallahassee Police, and one of the lead trainers, Clay Fallis, just normal conversation, don't know me from the next trainee. He while we were waiting for the other car to go through the skid pad, he comes up to me and is like, "Hey man, what are you still in college?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm still studying." He was like, "What are you studying?" I was like, "Criminal justice." And he kind of just paused and he was like, "You already have a job as a police officer, right?" I was like, "Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I hope that doesn't mean I'm about to get fired after this conversation." But he was like, "No, no, no, no." He was like, "Why don't you diversify yourself because you already have the job?" So I didn't take any college courses that the rest of that year just because I was, just trying to get through my FTO and try to get through my probationary year. So in the spring of 2006, I switched my whole degree to business. So I went from criminal justice to business because what Clay had mentored me on in that moment was everybody else in law enforcement is going to have a criminal justice degree. Why don't you be the one different person and go get an MBA or excuse me, go get a business degree? And I was like, that makes sense. And then I had met a guy during my time at Florida State. He was studying to get his PhD. He's a professor now at Iowa State. And he was like, "Okay, so you got a bachelor's degree. What else you gonna do?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. I don't want to like. I'm cool with school. Like I get A's, B's, and a few C's here and there, but I don't really need a master's degree in law enforcement." And he was like, "Really, dude?" He was like, it's not about the degree, it's about how it teaches you to think.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh. I was like, I'd never consider that because my simple mind was, I already have a job and I have a bachelor's degree. In my life, those are two wins that set me apart and have at least met my standard, my goals of what I wanted to achieve up to that point. So I took his advice and I ended up going back for an MBA. And he wasn't lying. To level of thinking that's created when you seek higher education
Mhm.
is it's hard to quantify it if the person has never done it before. So, yes, a master's degree is more writing, it's more papers, but where you're going to thrive is as you rise in leadership. Any leader who has risen knows that the paperwork, you don't get less paperwork, you get more
Yeah.
paperwork.
Yeah.
And you have to think for other people. So those higher levels of education, it helps you get there. It helps you start thinking about the macro side of decision making, not just the, oh, I just got to finish my shift, I'm done. It was like, no, no, no. You're just not about, it's just not about finishing your shift. It's what decisions are you making right now and on the day you're doing the shift? How's that going to impact tomorrow? How's that going to impact next month? How's that going to impact next year? How is that going to impact that officer that comes to this neighborhood 5 years from now? And that's what degrees help you do. That formal education just allows you to think differently and it allows you to think bigger picture. So for me, anybody that asks me about education or degrees, I'm like, get as much as you can. Like, you may not see a direct correlation when you're getting it, but if you get a degree that obviously you have to enjoy, it makes sense. And as far as the corporate side, once again, the criminal justice degrees aren't going to teach you anything about corporate. It's not.
Right.
It's not what it's designed for. It's mostly taught you. It's mostly teach you about recidivism, reform, how procedures work. But if you are thinking about dealing with corporate minds, especially from a business aspect, that MBA shows you different numbers. It shows you different ways people do business. It just, once again, it helps put you on that level. That's why a lot of corporations in today's world, they require an MBA, not necessarily to speak, but to work because they know that you're going to start thinking differently. I kind of think in 2026 that the MBA is almost a minimum nowadays, just given the education level, because PhDs are being sought even more now. And with all the online programs, the ability for you to get a PhD in business or whatever is so much easier. So you almost have to have an MBA or a master's level degree in what you're doing
Mhm.
if you at least want to get to that level of leadership, if you want to get to that level of business. And I had people always tell me, well, I want to make more money. I say, well, I hate to tell you, but you might have to get a little bit more education. And they say, well, my agency doesn't offer any incentives for that. I said, you're not doing it for the direct
Mm.
incentives. You're doing it when they need somebody to be a bigger thinker and they bring you on these like focus groups or they bring you on these teams and you're like, you know what? I'm thinking about this. And when you have certain degrees behind your name and the other people in the room don't, I promise you that incentive that you aren't getting, you're gonna get something down the road. You're gonna get that promotion quicker. You're gonna get that level of recognition that you're seeking because they're gonna say, "Oh, he has an MBA, he has an MSW, he has an MSJ or MSCJ." Like they are gonna see it. They're not gonna always tell you, but they're gonna respect your decision a little bit more just because you have that. Even Pat, you know this. Even when people just call themselves doctors, how many times do we say, well, what do you have your doctorates in? Nobody cares. People
Yeah.
just know you have a doctor's degree. You could have a doctor's degree
Yeah.
in something completely random that they don't even know about. But the fact that you have a doctor's degree adds instant credibility. Think about it. When we go to the doctor's office, it's not like we sit there before they give us a diagnosis or they're checking our blood pressure. And how many times do we say, hey, doc, did you go to a D1 college program?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
doc, did you get that online? Did you get that? All we know is they're a doctor. So where I'm going with all this is education is extremely important and it pays dividends that may not always show up directly on paper. And it has for me, not just as a speaker, but as a law enforcement leader, because that's one thing people cannot take away from you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the things that we fail to do in our recruiting and training and retention in law enforcement um, or in any professional arena is we don't ask the right questions. And, and with respect to this education and the whole the whole career path is I would ask young officers if you couldn't be a cop, maybe you get injured, and
Mhm.
you have to take and your career's over, or God forbid you get fired because something went south and sideways, and you're getting punished for it, whether what you did was right or wrong. What would you do for a living? And so many of these young folks, when I say young folks, I mean, I'm talking 35 and under, go, "Oh, I don't know what I'd do if I wasn't a cop." And that tells me that you're not planning for your future, period, financial, or you think you are. Yeah, you sign up for all the overtime,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna make bank now, and man, my retirement paycheck, when my monthly retiree check comes in, man, I'm gonna be fishing and golfing all day long, and I'm gonna retire when I'm 48 years old. Well, I'm telling you that's not gonna happen. Uh, but and you're so right. People go, "Well, why'd you go to law school?" Well, I went to law school because everybody told me I was gonna be a great lawyer. So I was just living up to everybody else's expectations for
Yeah.
me. And then I go through 3 years of law school, pass the bar exam on the first try, and get out to my very first job. I was a prosecutor doing night court, and I came to realize September 29th, 1982 was my first day as a practicing lawyer, and I get all my case files from the clerk of court's office. It's all traffic cases for night
Mm.
court that time. And then I realized, holy crap, law school did not teach me how to practice law. It only taught me the strategic thinking. And I was
Yeah.
on a national mock trial team. And, in the morning, you'd be in a competition and you're arguing, you're the plaintiff's attorney and you're arguing, in this lawsuit on behalf of the plaintiff. And then you come back that afternoon in the exact same case is they tell you, oh, now you're the defense attorney. Argue as vigorously
Yeah.
as the defense attorney. So you learn those strategic thinking skills, and
Mhm.
that will then give you the opportunities. And I'm not saying go to law school, but I do advocate
Why
for
not?
getting because it's so darn expensive.
That's
and
fair.
and practicing law, in 1982, I had a private practice at the same time that I was actually, a prosecutor because the pay sucked. Uh, and my overhead for practicing law, which I never took any business classes, I sucked at business. I suck at numbers kind of deal. My wife of 46 years owns her own accounting company. I've never done a tax return. I wouldn't know how to do one. And so I, I have this private practice, and this is 1982, 51% overhead. And
Oof.
I'm like, yeah, it's like, and for those
Oof.
that don't know math, that means 51 cents of every dollar I collected, not billed, but I collected. The first 51 cents went out to pay expenses. So I was making 49 cents on the dollar, which is not a terribly good return. But
Yeah.
the whole point I think is what education does for us is not just in the immediacy of the career you're in right now. It
Correct.
prepares you it can prepare you to be a better parent, a better neighbor, a better community member, because you learn how to think. I don't want to say better, but think more strategically, and that you can see and understand. I don't have to agree with people that have a particular attitude, a mindset, a
Mhm.
settled way of thinking, which we really see that's going on in today's world of politics. Is you can never win an argument. You can have debates, you can have conversations, But if you're going to argue with somebody, um, it, nobody wins.
Right.
My dad used to say, never argue with an idiot. They'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. and
Yeah.
but that's, I think education does for each
Mhm.
of us, is to give us a more openness to understanding and compassion and empathy that we might not otherwise have. Um, I want
And, Pat, before we move on, I want to add to what you just said, because I think that's, and I, as you were saying it, right, when you said it, I was thinking about in the beginning. One of the things that actually happened to me when I was a border patrol agent, and this was while I was studying my MBA. Myself and another agent, we were patrolling an area, and like I said, I don't know what they use now, because I try not to be the person that says, "Oh, this is what they're still using." But back then, we used to drive Tahoes, a lot of, off road, something with 4-wheel
right.
drive. So we're on one of these ranch roads, a lot of dirt, a lot of rocks, and we get a flat tire. Now, for those that's only worked on pavement, trying to change a flat tire on rock or dust or sand is a whole nother story. And ideally, you want to get the vehicle out to somewhere a pavement, but working on ranches and
Yeah,
working off road, you have to change your tire. Like, you're not driving an SUV that's 5 to 6,000 pounds onto the main road when you're still a mile away from it. It's just, you got a flat, you got to figure it out. So we got this flat, and we only jack we didn't have one of these cool floor jacks.
yeah,
We had the
yeah.
little rinky dink one that you have to turn violently to get the tire up and down. So I set this little flimsy jack under the SUV, and I raise it up. I get the first tire off easily, comes right off. I mean, it's flat. So when I'm putting the second tire on and I'm trying to get it arranged on the lug nuts, the jack slips. Since the tire was inflated, when the vehicle came off the jack, it hit my hand. It hit perfectly between my knuckle and my wrist, and I can look at it because I still have the scar. And immediately, my right hand, my dominant hand, my shooting hand, was out of service. The other agent that was there, he ended up changing the tire, took me straight to the hospital. While I was going to the hospital, all I could think in my mind was, what if I can't use my dominant hand to shoot anymore? What is that going to mean for my law enforcement career? Now, I know some of these guys out here that are ambidextrous, or they think they're good shooters. They're like, well, you can just learn how to shoot with your left hand. In theory, it sounds good. Could I have, after a lot of months of practice? Yeah, but up to that point, I was already 26, 27 years using my right hand as a dominant shooting hand. So as we were talking about other career options, that's the kind of things that were going through my mind. The only saving grace I had was I had education and I had another option. But when I think back to that time in 2011, I say, man, what if I wasn't preparing myself for something else that could happen? And
Mhm.
you're right. When I talk to these officers, when I talk to people that are at corporate jobs, entry level jobs, I'm like, okay, if you didn't have your job today, what else would you do? If you weren't working in the jail, if you weren't working as a trooper, if you weren't um, working the graveyard shift as a cop, what would you do? And you're right, Pat. It's as we've gotten older, now you look at it, you're like, dude, nowadays you can be in a good shooting, and if it's bad enough media wise, you're in a bad
Yeah,
shooting. Like,
yeah,
you don't like you don't know what's going to happen, or you might be defending your partner, and your partner for some reason didn't see the same thing you saw, and now you two are talking about two different things in a grand jury. You get indicted for doing the right thing, and now you have to get a new job. So it's good to have options, and education does provide that, especially in the corporate world. A lot of corporate organizations, and since I do work with them a lot now through my speaking business, education is something that is going to get you in the door. Your law enforcement career is one thing because that gives you experience, but they're also looking for some form of education. So
yeah,
even if you're not getting a degree today to use directly for your current career, because you probably don't need a degree as a detective. You probably don't need a degree as a sergeant. You don't need a degree as a warden, a chief, or a sheriff. You really don't. But if you're thinking about your future, if you're thinking about your family, it doesn't hurt to have that option just in case the bottom falls out. Because in law enforcement, we are a physical component. There's things that we have to physically do to do our jobs. And for
Mm.
some reason, if you get hurt on the job, whether or not it's your fault or not, the job's they're gonna give you some medical retirement. But I promise you, it's not gonna cover what you're thinking you get paid right now. A lot of times I know in the feds, after I think the first year on medical retirement, you get like 75%. And then over the next few years, it gets down to 40%. So think about that as you listen to this podcast with Pat and
Yeah.
I. Think about if you can effectively live off of 40% right now, given your current lifestyle. And if you can't, then you do need to look at, okay, what does another career look like that I would actually enjoy? Not working at maybe some fast food chain or something
Yeah.
that you have to pack groceries. What is something you can do or train yourself to do that you're going to actually enjoy?
Yeah. Yeah. I think Chris Voss, uh, that wrote,
FBI.
the international hostage negotiator, retired guy, wrote a great book called Never Split the Difference.
Mhm.
And I think the message that he shares, and yes, it is from his experiences as a hostage negotiator, but he takes all the same principles and he could apply it to the corporate world of collective bargaining and negotiations and just your everyday life. Is we particularly younger people, um, they don't they don't think about the four things we all want is safety, security, prosperity, and control. Those are the four fundamental needs and wants. But so many times we just get on that lazy river ride because we've swallowed the poison pill. My wife hates this expression, and I've learned to hate it. Because I used to say it, and she would just, give me the look. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
but we have swallowed this poison pill, and this is what it is. It is what it is. That expression that as you're facing adversity, you're facing conflict, you're facing the unexpected in your life, and you shrug your shoulders and go, "It is what it is," and you are psychologically surrendering and giving up if that's your mindset.
I agree.
And with people, the younger generations, um, they've adopted that, and at the days of having a career with even in the private sector. My dad worked for the same company for 36 years, and he
Mhm.
went from an entry level accountant to becoming comptroller of Mosler Safe Company, which was a
That's cool.
worldwide, one of the
Yeah,
world's
that's cool.
best manufacturers of safes. And but kids these days go, or even in law enforcement, hey, that other agency over there, everybody has a take home Tahoe, and I don't have a take home anything. Or hey, they're paying 50 cents an hour more, and yeah, because my retirement then would be more because I'm making more, and so they take that lazy river ride. I'm going to take the easiest path to try and get to what I want, and that's kind of a fallacy, which I think is a good segue into uh, tell me about. So two things. One, your book, "Greatness Beyond the Badge: Three Key Principles of Self Awareness." That and I'm intrigued with the title of "Failure Fuels Growth," and what does the fuels stand for? Because it's not it's a play on words there. It's an acronym. So tell us from your personal experiences and your lessons learned, how has failure fueled your growth, and what does that fuel? What's that stand for?
You know, we all fail. Let's just call it what it is. And when we're younger or we're not as mentally mature as we probably should be, even at older ages, we sometimes look at failure as a weakness.
Mhm.
Now, don't get me wrong, nobody wants to fail. Like nobody wakes up and says, "Man, I can't wait to not do good at this activity." However, it's part of life. So, one thing I've learned and I continuously learn is that when things don't go my way or things don't happen the way I projected it, let me go and look back at why it didn't, and then let me use that and create wisdom for myself. And that's part of the whole failure fuels growth framework is how do we take things that we've been through and use it as leverage to make ourselves better. If you've been through anything traumatic, critical, if you suffered any kind of loss, whether it's financial, spiritual, whatever that
Mhm.
physical, if you're still here, that's a good thing. That means you can use that situation to your advantage. You can use that as guiding others. You can use that as an opportunity to show the world that what happened to you is not stopping you. And that's why I create that framework. First and foremost, obviously, with the law enforcement background, we love acronyms. So I could not service justice without having some acronym in my business. But truly, I make things so simple because I like simple. Pat, I'm a simple person. Like although the education, the things I read, the people I speak to, I like things that I can apply any day of the week,
Mhm.
any time of the day. And that's how I built this framework. So I'm gonna first explain what each I'm gonna first say what each letter stands for, and then I'm gonna go into it not as long as a keynote, but I'm gonna kind of go and how do you get to all those marks. So the fuels framework, the F stands for face the moment, the U stands for understand the impact, the E stands for equip yourself, the L stands for lead with intention, and then the S stands for sustain the shift. If you hear anything off of this podcast about this framework, is if you start with that first letter, everything else in life will make sense. Face the moment. What does that look like? You talked about my book, Greatness Beyond the Badge. When I wrote that book in 2022, first and foremost, I didn't think I was going to write a book in 2022. I had just started a professional development for my business program that prior fall, and during March of 2022, I was listening to this podcast from the self publishing group, and the guy. And my problems, I could be competitive, a little competitive at times. This guy said I could publish your book in 90 days or less in Scratch, and not just me. He was talking to the podcast as a whole, and I had always toyed around with the idea of writing a book. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take him up on this challenge. So I want to say by the time the podcast was over, and I was listening to a replay, so it wasn't even a live podcast. I reached out to the guy's company and they were like, yeah, we can get your books done in 90 days or less. And I was like, nah, there's no way they could get this done in 90 days or less. But the game plan, the blueprint they set forth, man, I did not get the book done in 90 days or less only because my editor that I was using asked me to create another chapter to make things flow. But if not, I would have had my book published within that 90-day window. Needs to say, in July of 2022, I published my book, Greatness Beyond the Badge. The only reason I'm bringing that up right now is it because it was one of the reasons why the Fuels framework I now use today is so freaking important. If you pick up a copy of that book, if you read it online, however that looks for you, you're not going to see any story from my childhood as it relates to my mother's mental health. That's because I had hid away that so deeply, especially through all the law enforcement experience that we had. And we know we're good at hiding feelings and
Mhm.
emotions. I hid that moment away so deep that when I went through the process of writing my book, it never came up at all in my mind. It was a whole year later as I kept looking back at my book and I was thinking about creating more self-awareness that I was like, "Oh crap. There's a whole moment in my life that I blocked out because I never wanted to face it. I never wanted to address it. I never wanted to look at it again." So that's why I tell people my framework, Failure Fuels Growth, that first letter is going to help you identify things as you've been through. And one thing I start my keynotes off with, probably if not in the first 10 seconds, usually within the first 10 minutes, is what's one battle you've been avoiding?
Mhm.
And that's because there's things in our life that if we can't get over these certain humps, these certain setbacks, these certain roadblocks, how do we help other people get through it? Because at the end of the day, a lot of things we do is to lead our teams, it's to lead our families, it's to lead the people around us.
Mhm.
But how do we coach them? How do we mentor them if we're not facing our own battles? So for me, face the moment specifically deals with you looking back in your life and realizing and finding out things that you don't want to deal with. And once you identify that, once you label it, we've learned through studies in psychology that that helps your mind mentally open up to it. Now, I'm not saying you go live in the past. Like what happened to my mother and how I experienced that 25 years ago nearly. I don't just think about this every day. Like I'm not going to counseling just for that. Like I'm
Yeah.
not like harping in that time, but it's allowed me to release so many other things that's happened in my life since then. I'm like, oh, if I can get through that, since I have gotten through that, how much more impact can I have? So if you hear anything about my fuels framework, the very first thing I want everybody to do, however, I don't care if you're 14 listen to this podcast or you're 94, if you feel like you're being held back in some way, like you just haven't go through your life and say, okay, what is one battle I have not faced yet? What is one battle that I haven't identified as something that has happened to me? I promise you, because I still go through it. Trust me, I still look at different things, and I'm a human being, so I have
Mhm.
battles daily as well. And I look at these things, I'm like, okay, how is this impacting me? How is this affecting my life? How is it affecting my ability to lead others? Because if I'm not looking at these things, I can't tell someone, oh, maybe you should go look at EAP. Maybe you should go the peer counseling. Maybe you should go get a therapist. I can't tell people if I'm not diving into myself. So face the moment is the very first letter. The letter U is understand the impact. That's just going back through these moments that you face and realize, okay, this had an impact on me. And because of this impact, what else ripple effect has it created? Like I said, I'm not going to go through these letters as deeply as the first one because the first one's the most important. The letter E is equip yourself. That's just literally listen to podcasts like Pat's, getting a degree, just getting more education, getting more tools. Just like on your duty belt, the more tools, the better. In your mind, it's the same exact thing. The
Mhm.
more tools you have, the more stuff you equip yourself is when you hit these moments of crisis, when you hit these moments of trauma that you cannot predict when they're going to come. It's good to have tools. I can tell you there's things that's popped up, especially as a leader, that if I didn't have breathing techniques, I would have probably flew off the handle. And I learned these breathing techniques ahead of time, not knowing when I would need them, but it has helped me from getting in more trouble or putting your foot in your mouth. Like people are like, how do you not put your foot in your mouth? I'm like, because I have breathing techniques that if you tell me something, I'm going to process it first and say, okay, maybe I need to do something quickly to slow my brain down because my natural mouth wants to say something that's
Yeah.
probably not professional. And we're all like that. So even the most professional person some has unprofessional thoughts. Trust me, folks. It's a real thing. Even you're like, man, that person's professional all the time. We still have unprofessional thoughts. But for Michael Laidler, things I've learned in the past, like these breathing techniques, it has helped me overcome that. The fourth letter, lead with intention. It's the same as leading with purpose. When you know you're in something that's bigger than you, it allows you to help grow people a lot greater. So that part, that letter is just talking about literally your desire to lead others, your desire to be that person on the forefront that's going to do the right thing, that's going to help build yourself up. And the last one is sustain the shift. And to me, you can do all the four letters correctly, but if you're not continuously replacing those negative thoughts, if you're not thinking of other ways to lead, if you're not thinking about other ways to overcome your bad days on a consistent basis, you're just you're doing a one hit wonder on your mind.
Yeah.
So part of the sustain the shift is not just do great today. How do you do great for the rest of your life?
Wow. Yeah. I used to have a coffee cup that said it had the definition of stress on it. It's when your mind overrides your body's desire to choke the living crap out of somebody that desperately deserves it. That's
Yeah.
stress. And that
Yeah.
the box breathing, the breathing techniques is
Mhm.
uh, we actually I'm on a team of guys and ladies that we train law enforcement on interacting with people with disabilities, whether autism or wherever they're at. In that whole box breathing, 4 seconds in, take the deep breath, hold it, release it, and that it literally has a physiological positive effect on you shooting from the lip uh, and saying something you shouldn't, because it's good practice. Um, so, um, are there specific things that you do? I know you've explained the fuels concept. What are specific actions that you would recommend to somebody that wants to try and start developing that discipline of taking failures and the word failures has such a negative
I know.
connotation to it. And the first thought I had as you were talking about failures is just looking at professional sports. And you go up to bat 10 times and you're a success if you hit the ball 3 out of 10 times. And nobody looks at that and is going, "Oh yeah, you only have a 330, 333 batting average. You suck." No, it's like and the players don't see that as a failure, but it's that incentive to, hey, can I get to 375 or what? Doing that
Mhm.
evaluation, face the moment. I suck at a pitcher throws a slider or whatever. I just can't
Sure.
hit those. So now you know what you need to work on. And then the other thing, and I didn't I really appreciate your acronym of for
Mhm.
fuels, and I can look back for us, my wife and I, 11 years ago, our youngest son died serving overseas, and
Sorry to hear that.
we're a Gold Star family, and um, and we went through a 12-week process, a program called in the Catholic Church called Harvest Our Tears. And looking at what you just shared is that was actually the structure of that program of facing the moment and all the things you just walked us through. And then we had specific action things to do, not just dwelling on it or contemplating or meditating, which are all good tools, but there were things that we did um, to reinforce getting um, not getting beyond the tragedy and the emotions, but being able to harness it and not let it you know drive us into destructive behavior or destructive thoughts. What are some actual tools that you personally use to um, carry out this fuels acronym?
I'm a simple person. Write it down.
Okay,
Literally.
good. Yeah.
Literally I once again, like Pat, like it's some people for me, like the thing I like about my framework is that you can do it right now.
Hmm.
You don't have to wait. You don't have to go get extra tools. We have if you don't have a pencil, you probably got a phone. But put it in your notes program.
Yeah.
Literally the labeling
Dictate it.
side of it. Yeah, yeah, dictated. Yeah, the labeling side is so freaking important. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not like a doctor in that. But I can read enough and read what other psychologists have pushed out to make the study make sense. The easiest part to implement this is write down the things that have happened to you. Whatever pops up in your head, obviously, is still on your mind somewhere. And
Hmm.
labeling is so freaking important to just make this framework go. Like what you're gonna realize is once you write down that first thing you've been avoiding, you're gonna be able to connect dots to other things that's happening in your life. And then
Hmm.
that's how you work through the framework. So let's say, for example, you talk about what happened with your son 12 years ago. Um, If that's still a battle you've been avoiding, well, that's the first thing you label. You label it whatever you want. You can
Mhm.
label whatever you believe a good word or phrase would be. And then you say, okay, let's move to the next letter. How is this impacting what I'm doing going forward? And on top of that, why am I not addressing this? What
Mhm.
else has happened to me to make me understand why I want to avoid this? If it hurts, that makes sense. But if I'm not addressing it, why do I not want to get through this?
Right.
Then when you continue to look at that same incident, okay, what other tools have I had before that can help me get through this moment? Do I need to get through a 12-week program? Have I been to one before? What tools did they give me? And if you can't seem to find a tool, we're in a very digital age of a lot of freaking resources.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
get yourself something.
Yeah.
Go chat
Ask.
GPT. Yeah, go chat
Just
GPT.
ask.
You could
Just
probably
ask.
find, yeah. Yeah, just say, hey, or you probably know someone that's been through something similar to you. Go
Yeah.
equip, say, hey man, I know this. I don't want to bring this up, but I'm really struggling and I'm having a hard time like processing these thoughts. What did you do or what are you doing to understand what's going on? And folks, you're going to be very surprised how many people are willing to share what has worked for them.
Mhm.
If you
Absolutely.
take 10, if you take 10 people, I'm gonna go on record and say 9 of them are willing to share what they've used
Yep.
because they know whatever they're going through, if it's similar to yours, it freaking sucks. And most people don't want the next person to go through that, especially our law enforcement family. We don't want other people to suffer. That's what we do for a living. So if we can
Yeah.
share something we've been through with a brother or sister
Yeah.
that's reaching out for help, we know that they're struggling if they already asked us for help. We already know that, especially the so-called tough people, whether you're male or female. If we
Yep.
know they're asking for help, we know that they can't sleep at night like we couldn't. So when you're still looking at that same battle, what tools do you have and what tools can you use or need going forward? That's going to help you get a list of people. That's going to help you get a list of internet resources. It's going to help you different programs. Then the next letter, do it with intention. Lead yourself with a purpose saying, I want to get better. How do you do that? You just write it down. I'm going to lead myself to get better in this many days. So, once again, folks, I'm telling you, all these letters are something you can do within probably 5 to 10 minutes if you actually want to do it. And then the last part is actually sustaining it,
Yeah.
giving yourself different things that work for you, like different like if you say I don't want to be held back by this negativity anymore. Okay, how do you do that? Maybe it takes you giving yourself daily affirmations. You have to find what works for you. I only provide a framework that reinforces what you can do, but I don't tell everybody what they can or they cannot do because to keep this framework as simple as possible, there's some things that you're going to have to find out works for you. Because for me, I can't do meditation. I suck at meditation. I cannot sit anywhere. I can't even do it for 5 to 10 minutes. But there's something called the 6 second method that I like to use. And that's part of my breathing, like you said, kind of like the box breathing technique.
Yeah.
That works for Michael Laidler. So I use that for me, but it's part of what I learned in letter E that now I'm like, okay, just because I know these tools, what repetition works for me? And that's how you
Yep.
sustain the shift. Do you need to do box breathing every day? Do you need to do box breathing every week? Do you just need to do it every time you believe you're in a situation that is going to get your blood pressure up a little bit? Whatever that looks for you, that's part of all those letters. So for me to have people implement this like today and every day, it just starts by writing it down. Get a paper, get a pen, a pencil, get your phone. If you like to do that digital writing, get one of those styluses for your iPad or one your
Mm.
tablet. Whatever that looks like, it literally starts with you writing it down. You don't need Michael Laidler to give you a whole chart of lists. You can
Yeah.
just find a random sheet of you can find a printer paper with no lines on it. When you label something, you're going to be able to work through all these letters as well. But you can do it within a day. You're like, Michael, that sounds too simple. It is, but so is eating like praying before you eat. That's a very simple thing, but if you're not doing it every day, it seems a lot harder. The way you get through some of that stuff is repetition and
Yeah.
just putting that effort in.
That's how we learned our ABCs. That stupid song.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just keep
repetition.
singing it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Just
yeah,
keep singing it.
yeah. What one of the things, and I love what you're saying. That simplicity, the old KISS principle, is
Mhm.
the when I have trained, particularly law enforcement in the military, every branch but the Coast Guard and Space Force, I've trained these folks, and one of the things I tell them is we all have a life sentence, and not the kind prison life sentence,
Yeah.
but yeah, we all have a life sentence, and that is, what is the one sentence people are going to say about you at your funeral?
Mhm.
They're summarizing your impact on their life at your funeral. And then I tell them, write it down. Literally, write down what do you want them to say? What do you want that life sentence to be? And then so write it down. And mine is changed over the years. But for the last 15 years, it's been, I want people to say I impacted their life in a good way. And whatever that looks like, whatever story they tell, but the bottom line is Pat impacted my life in a good way. And then I write down, what are the things I'm not doing right now to live that sentence? And that's that self-assessment. And what can I be doing? Write that down. And then put it where you're going to see it. Tape it to your mirror in your bathroom, because well, you and I, we don't shave every day, but we got the
We
beards
shave
and stuff
enough.
going. Yeah,
Yeah.
we shave enough, but you brush your teeth every day, so put it where you're going to see it, and then that's a reminder, that repetition, that's sustaining, and it's simple, and you only have to write it down once. Um, and same thing with goal setting. Write down 3 goals you're gonna achieve in the next 90 days, like you write in the book.
Mhm.
And then write down, what are you gonna do to celebrate? When you achieve, you're gonna start, running a mile and a half, or whatever it is you're gonna do. And then when you achieve that goal, what are you doing to celebrate that? Even if nobody else knows what your goals were. Because physiologically and psychologically, we need attaboys, and pats on the back, and we don't recognize ourselves enough
Mhm.
that, hey, you did something that you said you were going to do, and that's good for you. Um, so, Michael, best way people could contact you, they want to learn more, they want to learn your speaking event, or it's a corporate client, somebody's listening that goes, hey, I want this message brought to my company. How do they get a hold of you?
The best way, outside of maybe calling or texting me, is my website. You can just go to michaelaLaitler.com, and you'll see demo videos. You'll see other my stuff of my keynotes. You'll even see a form on it that says contact me. Now, if you say, well, Michael, that seems too informal, I'm on every social media platform. Except, I mean, I'm kind of on X, but not really. Um, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook under my name. You can Google my name, and I promise you, I've gotten to the point to where I take up the whole first page. There might be someone that squeezes in every once in a while, but I'm at least the whole first page and a lot of the second page. So if you look on there, you can find me there. Email is Michael at michaelalaitler.com. I mean, anything, folks. I mean, I've made it because I've learned the business side of life. I can't hide my talents and be effective. You can't do both. Like, if
Yeah.
you have something to share, you have to do it. And once again, technology is something I know people are like, well, I don't like social media. Guys, if you're running a business, you have to be on social media. You have
Yep.
to be available. Like, I'm not gonna lie, if I didn't have a business, I would probably still be on Facebook just because that's like the family platform. But the other social medias, I probably wouldn't be on it. But there is a place for that, and people that you're trying to help will be on it. So for me, I know I am on these platforms because that's actually Pat and I met on LinkedIn. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's one of, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're somebody that I'm connected with commented on a
Mhm.
post that you made, and I'm like, man, I want to learn more about this guy. Jumped on LinkedIn, looked at your profile, saw all the things we had in common, and then literally, I just sent you an email going, dude, love to have you on the podcast. So what you're saying is absolutely the truth. It works. I've met so many great people because of that. And with what you were sharing about fuels and everything for the listeners, if you go back and listen to "Let Judas Walk," the episode we did with Kelly Smith, actually former chief of police in a town in Texas, and he and I
Okay.
went to the FBI National Academy together. That's how we first met in 2010. But go back to and listen to that episode where the whole resolution of facing something, a challenge that you just wanted to run away from.
Mhm.
I call it fear, forget everything and run. Uh, and Kelly and I talk about that, and his conclusion was in that first doing the face with what you're going through or what you have avoided is he literally goes, sometimes you just have to let the Judases in your life walk and forgive them and then forget. And I don't mean
Right.
forget what they did to you, but uh, don't let it eat you alive kind of deal. And that's, I think, if you listen to that episode now with the fuels uh, acronym in mind, I guarantee you, you're going to see every stage that he ticks off of each one of those letters. So, uh, and I'm going to have it, Michael. I'm going to actually on LinkedIn. I'm going to introduce you to him. He's a
Yeah,
great
please
guy.
do. Yeah. Yeah.
He's
And I want to add, Pat, I was going to add to what you're saying. People always see me smiling and maybe laughing or or just always in a good mood. And they probably think like, oh, what makes that funny or why are you smiling? Because at the end of the day, I control my energy. And I
yeah,
know through all the stuff I've been through, I faced the moment in a lot of stuff. And what you think you should be mad at me about or I'm mad at you about, we're gonna get over it. Because at the end of the day, that's what life is. And a lot of people look at it, and I've had someone say, "Man, why are you always smiling?" Or you think that's funny? I'm like, no, I just know that I'm in a happier place no matter what's going on between me and you.
yeah,
And you might think of it as insulting. I don't care.
yeah,
You're not gonna judge my energy or my attitude and say, "Oh, you shouldn't be smiling or laughing." I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because I know at the end of the day, I'm gonna feel good about whatever's
yeah,
going on because I have to. I have
yeah,
to lead people. I have to show my son that you got to find the positive ways out of life. And people see that and they're like, they don't know all the stuff I've had to put myself through to face those other moments. So you're right with the framework, and it really hit me when you said let the Judas walk away, because sometimes if you think that everybody's here to make you happy and to see you happy,
hmm,
you're just going to find yourself struggling. And once you face those moments of those people that you let go, those Judases, you're gonna be like, huh, I should always be happy because I'm in a space right now where if I'm alive, there's a reason behind it.
yep. The ultimate, let Judas walk. Why Christ had the ability, the authority, everything to
Mhm.
drop him right in his tracks because he knew what he was about to go do. But he let Judas walk because Christ knew 3 days later was resurrection. He knew that, like, the joy that was going to come despite um, the pain and trauma and agony that he went through. So, if we have that perspective, we all know our beginnings. We all know where we are at presently. Only God knows the actual full blown ending, and He wants it to be the best for you. So if you have that mindset, that you can, what John Maxwell said, it's not what happens to you, but what happens in you
Mhm.
that matters. And so the same thing that you're sharing is, it's not what happens to you, it's how what happens in you, how you respond. And if your response is, I'm turning whatever these difficulties are, I'm facing them, I'm turning them into a powerful impact in my life and for other people's lives. So,
Absolutely.
Michael, it was so awesome to hear your story. I'm glad we got to at least meet face to face virtually.
Mhm.
For our audience, thank you so much for tuning in again today. It's because of you that we're in 32 countries on 6 continents and making a difference in the lives of everyone that we meet. So thank you. Share this message, share this episode with somebody that you know needs to hear it. And always, always, always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons, because that's what warriors, servants, and leaders do every day, every time. Love you all. See you next week.